So let us begin. It was a pleasure to burn. It was a special pleasure to see things eaten, to see things blackened and changed, with the brass nozzle in his fists, with this great python spitting its venomous kerosene upon the world. The blood pounded in his head, and his hands were the hands of some amazing conductor playing all the symphonies of blazing and burning to bring down the tatters and charcoal ruins of history. And that, everyone, is the famous beginning of this wonderful book. There is a lot to unpack here, Okay, there's going to be more than what's actually on the deck, but we're going to start with the basic, which is the repetition of the word pleasure. A pleasure to burn, a special pleasure to see things eaten. Look at that repetition. What does it tell you? Well, it really emphasizes Montag's love of being a fireman. He loves being a fireman. We're going to look at the next passage. It really reinforces that point, right? He loves it. But what about it does he love? Like what kind of words are these? Like eaten, blackened, changed, right? Venomous. I mean, we'll get to the python metaphor in just a second, but those are very violent words, right? Like, oh, like seeing things eaten and blackened, you're like, that's not pleasurable. That's not pleasurable at all, right? So this really contrasts with what I guess like normal people might think about the word pleasure, and that shows this world is upside down. Okay. And look at the metaphor. Look at the metaphor that's being used. The kerosene hose is actually compared to a venomous snake. Now, this is something that you're going to see throughout the entire novel. The use of animals and nature, because again, it's not going to be a normal comparison, right? Like you would not compare, well, first of all, a hose would have water and not kerosene, for starters. But also, you're going to compare that to a venomous snake and say, like, oh, what great pleasure. No, like, that's not okay, right? That's not okay. It's not okay. But also, like, we're going to see the hound. Remember, we talked a little bit about or touched on the idea of the mechanical hound. Like, what is a dog in this society, right? What does it mean to be human? Are these human even alive? Like, these are all questions that we're going to look at, all right? And this really comes up in the beginning. So definitely stay tuned to all the different images of animals and nature in this society, all right? And what's so weird is that, once again, it's supposed to be beautiful, right? Like, first of all, if I just read out loud, his hands were the hands of some amazing conductor playing all the symphonies. You're like, oh, that's actually really nice. I can see myself in Carnegie Hall, and there's this guy going like this. Yeah, not musical. Greatest regret of like my family is I don't have an ounce of like musicality in me. But like, it's supposed to be really beautiful, right? But it's a symphony of, I don't know, destruction. It's so vivid, that contrast, right? And what's also really amazing about this, which I'm just going to point out, symbols, because gosh, Bradbury, he's just like decked this book out, his prose out with symbols. Hands, right? The hands of some amazing conductor. You're going to see hands over and over and over and over and over again, okay, as a symbol. So that is how we are introduced to the world of Fahrenheit 451. As I mentioned earlier, there is this familiarity, this like speculative quality, but also this distance, right? We don't actually know what's going on, and everything's kind of upside down, All right. Now, let's keep going with this characterization of Montag, our protagonist.